All right, what's going on, boys? It's Keg from Rum Pure Bets, back with another UFC Fight Night main card, actually full card breakdown. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Rum Pure does not ask you guys for much. They continue to give out solid content. All they ask for is a like and hitting the subscribe button. It's the least you can do. So I'll wait. Get after it. Go ahead, I'll wait. All right. And away we go. So it's UFC Fight Night Paris. First time the UFC rolls into France. We got a solid main event. Cyril Gane, Tuivasa. We'll break it down from start to finish like we do every week. So hang on. I just want to get the chat up so I could see you guys in the chat. I forgot to do that. Pop that out. And away we go. All right. Solid. So I guess we'll start at the bottom like we normally do, work our way up to the main event. Interesting fight card. A bunch of people that do not belong in the UFC are on this card because of various fighters dropping out. Because fights just continue to fall out, I guess. And they signed some kids, man, that are not UFC ready at all to fight on this card. But all we can do is work with what we have. So we'll try to find a couple profitable angles. And if we can make some money on the card by the end of the night, we did our job. So let's start at the bottom. Actually, I don't even know if this is the bottom, but this is the way I have my fights listed. So Nasruddin Imavov against Joaquin Buckley. I think that I haven't been ultra impressed with Joaquin Buckley, but we have to at least give him his due. Lately, he's been winning. He's won 5 out of his last 6, which is pretty solid. And this will be the second fight in a row where he's the betting underdog, right? Albert Duraev fight last time out. He won that fight handily. Buckley looked good. But, you know, the script has basically been written on Buckley. He's a range striker, right? He's not very big for the division, but he's jacked, but he's short. In terms of reach advantage, sometimes he's giving up reach, sometimes he's not. Now, he's 5 inches shorter than Nasruddin Imavov, but he's got a 1-inch reach advantage on him. So that really shouldn't hurt Buckley here. His wrestling looks like it's getting better. To be honest, everything looks like it's getting better. Everything. I mean, if you go back and look at how bad he looked early in the UFC run to where he's at now, his wrestling is improving, his cardio is improving, even his fight IQ is slowly getting better, although it's not all the way there, right? So all in all, I kind of like Buckley, but you know, I'm not running to the window to bet him unless he's fighting absolute tomato cans. His opponent, Nasruddin Imavov, a good, solid range striker. I like his striking better personally. He's always on the front foot, always giving the pressure. He tries to get those people into one corner of the octagon before he really starts to let his hands go and work for a finish. But when he smells blood in the water, it's pretty good. His technique is solid. I think he fights behind a solid jab. He has some power for the division. His fight IQ has been strong thus far, and his gas tank holds up relatively well. Defensively, his major liability is probably defensive striking. And I said this on every show that I've been on today, but it's worth noting. It's worth noting because I forgot my train of thought because my daughter just walked in the room. Jesus Christ. Where was I, boys? I forget. I guess I'll just start with Imavov. Imavov, another solid range striker. He's always moving forward. He tries to get people into the corner, cut loose on them. Technique is solid. He fights long, fights behind a solid jab. He's got some power for the division. Fight IQ has looked pretty good. Gas tank has held up pretty well. All in all, I think there's a lot to like about Nasruddin Imavov from an offensive standpoint. Oh, I know what I was going to say. On this card, there are probably 5 fighters that have no problem walking into the pocket with their hands around their waist. I don't know why anybody does it. You should always protect yourself when people are looking to punch you in the face. Some guys do it, some of the guys don't. Imavov is eventually going to pay for the fact that he walks into the pocket with his hands down way, way, way too low. Now, is this going to be the fight that it costs him that knockout? It's possible. It wouldn't shock me to see him circle into a head kick from Buckley. But I definitely rate Imavov's striking better, in my opinion, than Buckley. On the ground, I think Imavov is pretty solid. His top control is good. The way that he level changes works for the most part. But to be fair, I don't think he's really a submission threat, at least thus far on the UFC roster, because he has not been able to submit anybody on the UFC roster. He did have 4 sub wins on the regional scene, but nothing since joining the UFC. So he is a pretty big favorite. Opened around minus 180. And right now he's minus 240. Come back on Buckley around plus $2. It's a tough fight to call. I think Imavov is the better striker, and I'm going to pick him to win the fight. I'm concerned a bit about his striking defense, but I think he's going to win the fight because I rate him a better fighter right now. I really do. I'm not looking to lay minus 240. You shouldn't be looking to do that either. So from a money line perspective, it's totally dog or pass. You're either taking the plus 200 on Buckley, or you're not betting the money line, because as much as I like Imavov, I'm not sure if he should be this big a favorite against Buckley. So the way that I think, if you're looking to bet this fight, how I would approach it is either the fight ends by decision at plus 140, or you can shoot your shot that Buckley gets the KO here. I don't really see it. I would lean fight ends by decision at plus 140. Now, am I going to bet that? Probably not. I will probably pass this fight when it's all said and done, unless the guys on the live betting show can sell me on something that I'm not seeing. I will probably fade the fight, but my pick would be Imavov. Mikhail Figlak against Faris. I'm familiar with Figlak because his last 4 fights at Cage Warriors, I watched them all. Not live, unfortunately, but I do watch them all. I like this kid a lot. I think his striking is solid. His cage control and the way that he's always moving forward and always has his front foot in the pocket is going to serve him well here. I think he throws combinations well. Some guys just pot shot you. It's one big power hook over and over again. His combinations seem pretty good. And he's content for the most part to keep the fight on the feet usually, because he's usually having success, but he can level change. He can grab takedowns. If he gets you on the ground, I like his wrestling. I think his top control looks pretty good. His transitions look good. His cardio has held up relatively well. So I think that he's going to be on the UFC roster for a while. I think he's close to ready, and they did not do him a disservice, I think, by giving him Ziem first, because the main I would say the where Faraz Ziem is at his best is when he's working in space, when he has the ability to control range. When he's doing that, I don't think his striking is that bad. But, I mean, he's very low volume, only 2 significant strikes per minute. It's hard. I mean, think about that. So that's 10 significant strikes per round. So you're landing 30, 40 significant strikes in a 15-minute fight. That's not the type of fighter I'm looking to have my money on, personally. On top of that, whatever game, like I mentioned earlier, whatever game that this kid has, it's all predicated on him being able to move in space. And if we know anything about Figlak, he is not going to give you that space. I expect him to be inside the kicking range for the majority of the fight, have his front foot in the pocket at all times, walking this kid down. And once you walk him down, he becomes way, way less dangerous. So my decision point was, do I just take him by decision, or do I take him by round 3 or decision at minus 110? I went with the round 3 or by decision because Ziem has been known to gas. He does not have third round cardio at all. And Figlak does. And he's probably going to set a pretty wicked pace. So I guess there's an opportunity for Figlak to really put him away in the third round. Because of that, I wanted to have the coverage of, just in case there was a third round finish, I was covered. But also, if he won a decision, we were also covered. So I'm going to bet Figlak by in round 3 or by decision, which I think is available at FanDuel. And when I bet it, it was about minus 110. I assume it's still right around that price. But aside from that, I did not like anything else in the fight. Stephanie Egger against Perez. Listen, man. Another fighter. Perez does not belong on the card. She's probably only on this card because they were scrambling to make sure that they had enough fighters, because she's not UFC ready. First of all, she has beaten tomato cans, straight tomato cans, gym rats. I think the promotion that she was fighting in was literally out of a gym. So the girls that she has been in an octagon with are really, 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 really bad. Really bad. So it's impossible to know where this girl is in terms of her skill level, because we don't have anything to judge her against. Like, anybody can look good against a tomato can. It's once the level of competition gets better, you really start to know what a fighter can and can't do. And she has not fought that level of competition for us to really know where she's at. So I'm going to pick Egger to win the fight. But she's been the betting underdog at open in her last 4 fights. Now she sits a minus 245 favorite. I'm good. So we're on the split prop here. Everybody knows what we do with the split props. Surprisingly, we've been getting numbers like plus 350, plus 400. The split prop in this fight is 7-1. Thank you and good night. We'll take it. Whatever happens, happens. Bet it and forget it. we're making money in the long run. That's for sure. Khalid Taha against Christian Quinones. Taha, pretty well-rounded, carries power. His striking is solid in the pocket. His grappling skills are good. He can submit you when he finds openings. Now, offensively, I don't really mind his game. But defensively, man, his takedown defense is not good. He's been taken down almost a dozen times in his last 3 fights. That's a bad look. It's not a great look. But his cardio has held up pretty well. He's durable. And when he's getting the fight that he wants, his offensive game is always predicated on being inside the kicking range of somebody. Again, a lot like Figlak. He wants to live in the pocket, Taha. When he's there, he's comfortable, and he's where he should be. When he's outside that range and he has to deal with kicks to get into range, he becomes a less potent offensive fighter. For Christian Quinones, another guy coming in off 10 days notice. I mean, you might as well just call this card like off 10 days notice, because that half the card. So we last saw him on the Contender Series. He fought Zhao. He did get the win, but he got dropped and hurt badly in that fight. And that seems to be what this kid's all about. You can hurt him badly if you can accurately strike with power. You can hurt him. So but it's worth mentioning. I know we've been talking about people and their level of competition. This kid, it's actually not that bad, because most regional Mexican promotions are filled with dudes that can bang, that just have cardio for days, and that can bang, a la Brandon Moreno. Like, they're just filled with them on the regional scene. So his level of competition, it's not that bad. But he's a range striker that's really wild. I like his footwork on the outside. I think his kicking game is good. He's solid in the clinch. He's got good knees. And he fights behind a decent jab. On the ground, listen, his top control wrestling didn't look bad from what I saw on the regional scene. But, I didn't see much of it. So until I give an opinion set in stone, I would like to see a little more. But his top control wrestling didn't look bad to me. It looked like he was able to transition into side control when he had to, full guard when he had to. I saw him mount somebody pretty easily. So his top control seems okay to me. But I think the verdict is probably still out on that. But again, defensively, his big liability, he relies on his head movement, which to miss like counters coming in. And his problem, man, is another dude like Imavov that walks into the pocket with their hands around their waist. And one day he's going to get dropped. And that could be tomorrow. It could be tomorrow. And his cardio has not been good. I think that's probably the biggest knock that I found on him. Late second round, he starts to fade badly. And the third round, it doesn't look like he has much. And, that's concerning when you're fighting somebody like Taha, who can go 3 rounds, no problem. And if he sees you slowing down the longer the fight gets, he will ramp it up and try to break you and put you away. So I think that's probably the biggest red flag for Quinones going into the fight. Yeah, and that's it. So the odds opened Taha minus 150. Let's see where he's at now. Minus 120. So, now he's minus 120. And this was, I guess, a tough fight to call because I'm not a huge Khalid Taha guy, really. I would have to go back and check my spreadsheet to see the last time that I actually backed this guy. But if I was betting the fight, he would be the side I would be backing for sure. I think that if you want to bet the fight, you throw a half unit on Taha on the money line, and you throw a half unit on Taha by knockout. Can he submit Quinones? Maybe. If you want to bet inside the distance for a half unit instead of the knockout prop, you can. But for me, it would probably just be the KO prop at plus 350 and maybe a half unit stab on the money line. Do I feel great about it? I do not, because it's Khalid Taha. But that's where I'd be looking if I was betting, boys. All right, next fight, William Gomis against Jarno Aarons. Yeah, so this is the first fight on the card where I'm probably taking the dog here. Now, I to be completely honest, I know a lot of fighters, that aren't in the UFC. I was not familiar with either of these guys before I started digging in to find the tape. Gomis, before this week, didn't even know who he was. I watched a few of his fights, and he's raw. Both these kids are raw. Both these kids should not be in the UFC. They don't deserve to be on the roster right now. But the UFC's in a pinch, and they signed both these dudes to fight each other, in a pinch. And you can tell because they're incredibly raw, and they're both works in progress. Now, for Gomis, he looked like he didn't like to be pressured in the cage, and he did not like to get punched in the face. And he appears to be a range striker that wants to work his way inside and control you with body locks against the cage until he can work for takedowns. Sometimes he gets the takedowns. Sometimes he doesn't get the takedowns. It's not a guarantee. But, his striking technique looked disgusting, looked really sloppy. So that's really him in a nutshell. And for Aarons, I think that he looked like he had a better offensive base because he's got those Dutch kickboxing roots, which makes his technique just look better. He just looks better in exchanges, and he uses his footwork really well. He's weird because sometimes he'll take the center of the octagon and stand there and bang, and sometimes he will be on his bike for 3 minutes straight, jumping around the cage, looking to dart in and out of range, get in, get out, do some damage without getting hurt. So I've seen him do both. But on the ground, I think that, he does have 5 submission wins, right? So you would assume that he can submit you if he finds an opening. Okay. I didn't really see much in the way of his wrestling game, to be honest with you. But the 2 big problems that I saw with him were his takedown defense, number 1, which definitely needs improvement. And second is he always keeps his head on the center line. And anybody that is a fan of combat sports knows if you keep your head on the center line when you're throwing, eventually you're going to eat one that's going to hurt really badly and possibly put you down, right? So, listen, who wins this fight? It's a coin flip, bro. It's a coin flip. The fact that this kid is minus 215 is a joke. I saw nothing that makes me think that the favorite in this fight has a better chance to win than the dog. So give me the dog at plus 190. Now, it may not work out for us tomorrow, but if you stick to the value, especially in fights like low-level women's MMA, low-level men's MMA, like this fight is, if you stick to the value over the long haul, you will be profitable, period. Because I've done it for a decade. So it works. But yeah, this was probably the easiest snap call. Give me the dog at the price. So I'll take my shot. Whatever happens, happens. I know I'm on the value side, definitely. Now, I'm not telling you to throw a dime on it, but, throw $100 on it. Why not? There's value in the number. So, yeah, give me Aaron's at plus 190. Next fight, Benoit Saint Denis against Gabriel Miranda. So, I like Benoit Saint Denis. I like him a lot. His game plan's pretty rudimentary. All he's looking to do is strike his way in the range, get you against the cage, level change, work the takedown. That's all the kid does. But he's really good at it, man. He's really good. He's really good at putting you in the exact spot he wants you to be in. And then you're just there until you probably lose, right? Because his top control is really good. And like I said, how he transitions, what anybody that's a diehard MMA fan knows exactly what I'm talking about. You know that move when Khabib has you against the cage and he takes his leg and he wraps it underneath both of his opponent's legs to where they're pinned and they cannot move. And then you just get your ass beat. He does that all the time. Like, that's his go-to thing. If he can get that vice grip on you, that Khabib vice grip on the ground, that's what he's going to do. And it works. It works for him. But the big issue is he's not a great striker. That's his problem. Like, he's super hittable, and he's not really technically sound. I think his striking needs work. I think he wings hooks. It's not tight like when you watch Robert Whittaker fight. It doesn't look like that. It looks sloppy. But he only uses it to get inside so he can get hands on you. That's the only reason why he's throwing his hands. So his fight IQ, though, looks good. His cardio looks like it's on par with the division. So listen, I like this kid. We'll see where he goes. But yeah, all in all, he's got a game plan that works well. Gabriel Miranda, I only watched 3 fights of his in Brave. Now, I watched Brave, but I did not know who this was, if I'm being honest. So I watched him, and the 2 takeaways were, number 1, his cardio sucks. It's bad, really, really bad. And number 2, he's solid at getting you in submissions. He's got 16 wins, 15 by submission. So you basically know, if you're going to bet him, how you're going to go. You're taking him by sub, obviously. Why wouldn't you? I mean, what is 15 for 16? 97%? What is that? It's got to be close. So, but the problem is he's got about a round of cardio in him. Maybe 90 seconds off the stool in the second before he is toast. So if you're going to hedge on Miranda here, you take him by first round sub. That's the hedge. Or if you want to play it a little safer, sub in round 1 or 2. That's your hedge. Little sprinkle. because the real bet in the fight for me is going to be Saint Denis by submission in round 2 or 3 at 5-1. I'm going to hope that this kid can last one round, because if he does last that one round, I think it puts us in a great spot over the next 10 minutes to get that sub prop home at 5-1. So either that, or you can, I guess, just take fight to end by sub at plus 120 if you wanted to. I don't mind that really either. But my favorite bet is probably that little sprinkle hedge and Saint Denis by sub in round 2 or 3 at 5-1. That's basically where I'm at. If I had any confidence that Miranda could actually make it 15 minutes, I would have been all over Saint Denis by unanimous decision at plus 380. I just don't have the confidence that the kid is going to last. Not when a combined 23 out of the 25 wins that both these guys have come by way of submission. So I just don't have the confidence. So that's why I'll be looking at Saint Denis, and I will be looking at the sub. Charles Jourdain, Nathaniel Wood. This is probably your fight of the night, if I had to guess. I like both these guys a lot. I think that both these guys are better in some aspects of the game than the other. Nathaniel Wood was at one time a 135er. Now he goes up 10 pounds to featherweight, right? But that makes his hand speed way faster than Jourdain. He could set a pace, at least for the first 2 rounds, that's going to be way faster than the pace that Charles Jourdain's used to. I think that Nathaniel Wood has a big wrestling advantage in the fight. I think he's got an advantage in top control. He's got an advantage in transitions. But Jourdain has a better submission grappling game, definitely. But still, if I was going to rate who's better on the mat, give me Nathaniel Wood because of that top control. Now, Charles Jourdain is, in my opinion, 100% the better striker. I think that Nathaniel Wood is a good striker. Charles Jourdain he's just different, bro. He's just on a different level. And he throws punches that hurt. He's going to be able to hurt Nathaniel Wood badly. Just like he did Burgos in the 3rd round when he 2018'd them, or at least he should have. That fight should have been a draw. But, yeah, we're talking about a guy in Jourdain, right, that at one time fought at 155 pounds. So he's already big for 145. And now little Nathaniel Wood comes up from 135 and is fighting at featherweight now. So I expect Jourdain to be way bigger and have a size and just overall strength advantage in the fight. So his big liability, Charles Jourdain, is he can't stay on his feet when his opponents start to chain takedown attempts. And that's the reason, in a nutshell, if you think about it, that's why he lost to Shane Burgos. Because Burgos was able to get him down in round 1 and round 2. If not for that, he would have never lost that fight. So that's his big concern here. And I think it will help him that he's going to probably have the size and strength advantage here. So the odds open, Jourdain minus 200. Now he's around minus 150. So the deciding factor for me was I now he's actually minus 145. So the number continues to go down here. I almost took the 150, but I stopped myself because Charles Jourdain loses the first round in almost every fight, just like Cheeto does. They're similar in the way that they start slow and they start to build to a crescendo, right? Nathaniel Wood is kind of the polar opposite. He comes out fast. He wins the majority of the first rounds that he fights in. And if he's going to fade, it's usually late. So I am going to use this as a live betting spot. I'm going to hope that Nathaniel Wood wins the first round. If he does, I'm going to hop on Jourdain going into round 2. My guess is at plus 200, maybe. Maybe we get plus 200, plus 170, somewhere in between there. Because then I feel much better about holding that Jourdain pocket in my ticket, regardless of what happens. Like, if I lose that fight with a Jourdain ticket in my pocket at plus 175, it'll be much easier to swallow than if we lay the minus 150 right now. So I am going to my pick is going to be Jourdain. I think he's, just because of damage, I think he is going to hurt Wood. And I don't think Wood's going to be able to hurt him, really. So I'm going to pick Jourdain. I'm going to try to get on him going into round 2 at plus money. So that's going to be our pick there. All right. Abusupian Magomedov against Dustin Stoltzfus. Listen, man. Magomedov, he looks good offensively. I like him. He looked good in PFL. He looked good in KSW, at least offensively, because he carries power, comes at you fast. He throws combinations, and his kicking game looks good. And overall, his volume is good enough. His takedowns are great. Who did we see fight the other day? Last weekend, or the week before last? Was it Romanov that just started picking dudes up and throwing them? I mean, he does the same thing. He picks you up and just throws you on the ground. And his top control is solid. And if you give him openings, he'll submit you. So I like this kid, at least offensively. He's pretty well rounded. But defensively, man, I don't know. He's hittable. He's hittable. When he fights somebody that's got a really good check hook, he might pay for it. I think that's a concern. But the biggest issue is his inactivity. We haven't seen him in 2 years. Is it 2 years, right? Yeah. He hasn't fought in 2 years. Now, we always talk about unknown variables, right, in MMA, because you really don't want to go into a fight betting on somebody where there are unknown factors that you can't rationalize and throw into your handicap of the fight. And unfortunately, we haven't seen him in 2 years. Now, you would think he's continued to train, obviously. You would think he is probably improving, right? So I don't think it's that big of an issue, but it's still a concern. I don't think you should be running to the window to throw this dude in parlays at minus 285 off a 2-year layoff. That's just not smart. Could he win? Yeah. Could he look like a minus 3,000 favorite in there? Yeah. But it's still not smart, because say what you will about this kid, Dustin Stoltzfus. I don't like him, But listen, man, he's been in there with some tough dudes, and he's been in there the whole way. Now he just finally got his first UFC win. Took him 4 tries, but when you're fighting Rodolfo Vieira, Gerald Mearshart, Kyle Daukaus, those are legitimate guys that you're in there with that have a ton of UFC experience. So I don't think that this kid does he has not looked good in the cage. And there's nothing that he does that pops out and you're like, that's why I'm betting that dude. That right there is the reason. It doesn't exist. He's subpar, if we're being honest. But he's been active and he's been in there with tough guys. And you don't know what the fuck Magomedov's been doing for the last 2 years. So you have to keep that. You have to keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to pick Magomedov to win the fight because I don't believe in Dustin Stoltzfus at all. So if I was going to bet the fight, the one angle would be Magomedov to win and the over 1.5 rounds at plus 120. I think that's the best way to get on the favorite because say what you will about Dustin and how bad he's looked. He's gone 7.5 minutes with a lot of good dudes. So I don't see why he couldn't go 7.5 minutes here. But I can't pick him to win the fight because I just don't think he's very good. So we'll go with Magomedov and the over 1.5 rounds at plus 120. John Makdessi, Nasrat Haqparast. So both these dudes come in off surgery. Makdessi comes in off the leg surgery, which he had right after his last fight. Nasrat Haqparast comes in off the hand surgery that he had right after the Bobby Green fight. And when Nasrat Haqparast first came into the UFC, everybody blew the kid like he was the second coming, right? And he looked really, really good on the regional scene. So I understood why. And I had really high hopes for him. But despite everybody's high hopes, it hasn't panned out. He is not the guy that we thought that he was. He is not a title contender. He's had 9 fights in the UFC. He's won one fight over 500 through 9 fights. So he's not the guy that we thought he was. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a bad fighter. Because I think he's still a very good fighter, at least on the feet. He always fights behind a great jab. He carries power in that left hand. But it's worth noting, on the regional scene, he was putting dudes away like every fight. Just absolutely knocking guys cold. He has not been able to do that on the UFC level. So that's something worth mentioning. But all in all, I like his stand-up game. I think his footwork is great. I think that his punches come from great angles. He's got good fight IQ. His cardio always holds up well. So I think offensively, there's still a lot to like about Nasrat Haqparast, right? Now, if somebody wants to get him to the ground, they're probably going to get him there. I think that his takedown defense that number is a bit fugazi because he's fought primarily strikers. So, that takedown defense when it's actually been tested has failed multiple times. And I would say my second problem with him is he only has one knockout loss, but he's been hurt badly multiple times in the UFC and almost put away. That chin, it might not be fully gone, but it's at least starting to chip a little bit. it's starting to crack a little bit. So I think that's a point of concern for him too. Now, John Makdessi, another striker, just like Haqparast, that's going to meet him right in the middle of the cage. He's willing to throw his hands against anybody for the full 15. But the knock on him is he's old. He's 37, right? And people question how much he has left in the tank. But I don't. I think he looked really good in that Bahamondes fight. But the one thing that is worth mentioning, and credit to Dan Tom over at MMA Junkie, he brought up the southpaw point. And John Makdessi's never beat a southpaw. Lost to Trinaldo. He lost to Alan Patrick. Lost to Yancy Medeiros. And in that fight, he was mainly in southpaw stance. So John Makdessi, if you look at his record, unless you go back to the regional scene, he's never beat a southpaw, at least on the UFC roster. So that's a bullet point that you have to at least take into consideration when you're weighing pros and cons for the fight. Now, the odds open, Haqparast minus 200. He's minus 230. This is the second fight on the card where I think the value's on the dog. I don't think that Nasrat Haqparast should be minus 230 against almost every fighter in the division. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get there. I don't know if I'm going to bet him yet. But if I was betting the fight, I would be taking the shot on the plus 200 dog. That is definitely live in this fight. Aside from that, though, I didn't see any props that I really liked in this one at all. All right. So this fight, I can't believe that this isn't on the prelims. And this is actually on the main card right before the co-main event. Alessio Di Chirico, Roman Kopylov. Listen, Di Chirico's got one win in the last 5, right? Dude averages about 3 significant strikes per minute, so he's super low volume. Doesn't throw combinations ever. And if he's throwing power strikes, it's predictable one-shot hooks, or he's trying for a flashy KO head kick. But he's not that good of a striker. And if you go back and you look at the correlation to when he stopped trying to take people down and use his wrestling game, which actually isn't bad, when he stopped doing that is when he stopped winning. Go back and look at his last 5 fights and see how many takedowns he has. Then go back before that when he was at least winning on a semi-consistent level, and take a look at the takedown attempts and the takedowns. And that tells you everything you need to know. He is nowhere, if he's not going to wrestle, he has nowhere near the win equity that you would think he has, because his striking game is just not that good, man. Period. So, so that's my problem with him. And you can't count on it. What's going to change tomorrow that hasn't changed in the last 2.5 years? He hasn't been wrestling probably for about 2.5 years now. So why is that going to change tomorrow? It's probably not, right? So as for Roman Kopylov, he hasn't been very active at all. The dude's fought like 3 times in the last 4 years. So I don't know why he's been super inactive. I'm not sure, but nevertheless, only a couple fights in the last 4 years, and that's not good. And his last fight against Duraev, he did drop him once or twice in that fight, but he still lost a dominant decision where he was completely gassed out in the third round. He had absolutely nothing left in the third round of that fight. And, could that happen here? I guess it could. He's a southpaw. He actually used to look good on his feet behind a really nice jab to set up his range striking game. And it used to be effective on the regional scene. That's another theme of this card. Guys that look good doing one thing on the regional scene, that it's not translating over to the big show. So if you take a look at how he looked on the regional scene, dude looked like an absolute killer. But though that finish rate is not transitioning over to the UFC. So, but at least it's still there somewhere. At one time, it was there, right? At least you know that. On the ground, I don't know. His takedown defense looked like it was improving, but who knows, man? 3 fights in 4 years is rough. So the odds open offshore on D. Chirico around -150. Since then, it's now basically around a pick'em, right? Last time I checked. De Chirico -105. Yeah, Kopylov -115. So if I thought that Alessio Di Chirico was going to use the wrestling game that he did 3 years ago, I might pick him to win here. But I can't count on him to do it. And despite the inactivity, I still rate Roman Kopylov striking at a much better, higher rate than De Chirico. Even though it was on the regional scene, he still looked super clean, man. So looking at the odds, the only bet that stands out to me, because it's just objectively wrong, is the Kopylov finish only line at even money. That's just a mispricing. It shouldn't be that. He should be -200 probably, finish only. What have you seen from Di Chirico ever that makes you think that he should be the favorite in a finish only line against anybody? He's just not that dude. So other than that, I don't really like anything. I might bet that, maybe, the finish only line on him at even money, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. The line hasn't really gone anywhere, so we'll see where it goes. That would be the one, though, if I was going to steer you somewhere. Bobby Knuckles against Marvin Vettori. Listen, man, Bobby Knuckles is a beast. The end. Both these guys are really, really good. But one of them, I think, is just so underrated in Whitaker. He's so good. He's exceptional. Exceptional wrestler. Exceptional boxer. His striking is smooth from range. And, sometimes he even falls back on that black belt in karate with his stands. But then again, he's also super explosive in the pocket with his combinations. There's just so much to like about Robert Whitaker. And he's got legitimate fight-ending power. On the ground, how good is his wrestling? I don't know. How good do you have to be an Australian national champion? Probably pretty good, right? Yeah, probably. He's exceptional everywhere. He would be the champ the last 3.5, 4 years if it wasn't for Izzy. That's it. He's the only reason that he's not the champ, period. Now, to be fair to Marvin Vettori, he's been perfect pretty much, with the exception of the Adesanya fight. And he's very much in the same vein of being a wrestle boxer like Robert Whitaker. I think the difference is the striking. They're just on two totally different levels. Marvin Vettori's striking is very rudimentary. Sometimes he throws combinations, sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Most of the time, he's coming from pretty generic angles, right? Because his footwork is okay, but he ain't cutting no special angles without footwork. So I just think that when you rate both these guys and how good they are at boxing, it's like it's just two different planets. And I think that's where the fight's won or lost. Because as good as Robert Whittaker is at wrestling and takedowns and top control, to be fair to Marvin Vettori, he's just as good. He's just as good. But where he falls off a cliff in comparison is the striking. And if I trusted Vettori to go in there and do nothing but chain takedown attempts for 15 minutes, he might win the fight. Now, Whittaker has exceptional takedown defense, so maybe he couldn't get him down, but I think Vettori's good enough where he gets him down. If I knew he was going to do that for 15 minutes, I would probably take the shot on the dog money. But because you just don't know, if he decides to stand and bang with him, the true odds, Whittaker should be like minus 450 in true striking odds. If you knew they were going to stand on their feet for 15 minutes. So that's where I'm at. I think now credit to Vettori, he's got probably the most durable chin right now at 185 pounds. It's absolutely made of steel, his head. So I don't think he's going to get finished, but I do think he's going to lose a decision here, big time, badly. I think he's going to look bad. I think Whittaker's going to make him look bad on the feet. But if Marvin Vettori goes in there and he's like, you know what, bro, I'm taking you down and I'm going to pound your head into the mat, it could happen. And then he'll probably win the fight. But I'm gonna trust that he probably wants to, just like he did against Costa, basically stood in front of him the whole fight and just went toe-to-toe with him. Probably does that with Whittaker too. And if he does that, I think he's probably going to lose 30-27. So I'm on Whittaker by decision around minus 105, minus 110. I had to check the number I got. I think it was 105. That's where I'm at. Aside from that, though, I didn't see anything I liked. Main event. So this fight really comes down to, do you think Tuivasa is going to be able to catch Cyril Gane? That's what the fight comes down to. If you think he's going to catch him, then you take Tuivasa by KO. If you don't think he's going to catch him, then you find a way to get on Gane. I think that Cyril Gane, I think the best thing he does in the cage, that his number one attribute is avoiding damage. It's really hard because of his style to pin him down, get him in a corner, and hurt him. Tuivasa doesn't feel like that dude that's going to be right in his face, running around the cage wherever he goes to get hands on him. Tuivasa just doesn't fight like that. He's slow, bops in and out, slowly gets into the pocket. And where these guys differ is one guy prioritizes avoiding damage over giving it. Tuivasa prioritizes giving it over taking it because he knows that if he's taking damage, that means that you're in the range for him to take your head off. And that's his whole game. So these Tuivasa style heavyweights get lulled to sleep by Cyril Gane. They just slowly follow him around the cage like an asshole for 5 rounds, just getting picked apart. I mean, we literally see guy after guy after guy do it. I don't think that's going to change tomorrow. I think that Gane's going to stay on the outside, avoid the damage, and absolutely pick him apart. Now, I'm not saying don't take Tuivasa by KO early, because if he is going to KO him, probably going to be in those first 2 rounds. You can get like 20, somewhere around 20-1, round 1 knockout, somewhere around 25-1, round 2 knockout. I don't mind those for little sprinkle hedges, no doubt. But for me, the play is going to be Cyril Gane and the over 2.5 rounds at plus 105. I think that is the best way that you can get on the fight. Before I even started looking at the fight, Tyler sent me a message and asked me what I thought about that fight. And I said that's got to be the best way to bet on him, period. So I like that angle a lot. That's the angle that I took. But I might throw a little bit of money at 20-1, round 1, round 2, that Tuivasa just yokes him and catches him one time. But my primary bet will be Gane and the over 2.5 rounds at plus 105. That's every fight broken down. That's the best I can do for you boys. So Sign says Gane KO in 3, 4, or 5 is plus 500 when Ty gets tired. So that's another thing that I've been going back and forth with all week. Why do we think that Tuivasa is going to get tired? Just because he's chubby? Because Cyril Gane doesn't fight at a pace fast enough, I think, for his opponents to get tired. You're going to see Tuivasa slowly walking around the cage, following him all night long. So I don't know why that means that it's going to make him tired where he would get stopped late. Because I wish I liked that bet, because I would bet that bet, definitely. But I just don't see how what is going to happen to make him get tired. I don't think it's solely going to be from damage. That's the one thing that I keep coming back to. I'm trying to see a way where he gets tired, and unless like Gane starts going for takedowns, and he makes Tuivasa wear his weight early in the fight, in like rounds 2, 3, then maybe I can see that late. But if they're going to be on the feet and he's just going to be walking around the cage, following him all fight, I kind of don't see where Tuivasa gets so tired. I really want to like that bet though, Signed. I want to like that bet and bet it. I'm just struggling to see where he gets tired. But anyway, that's it, boys. That's every fight broken down at 9:00. A little after 9:00, probably like 9:15. Coop and I will be on the Sports Keg YouTube channel breaking down Sunday's NASCAR Cup race at Darlington. And then Sunday morning at 11 and at 1, Coop and I will be doing that on Rum Pure Sports and Rum Pure Bets. But before you go, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel right now. Use the promo code BETS25 off. It'll get you 25% off the first week or month at Rum Pure Bets. Football season's around the corner. The boys should crush this year. So make sure to sign up. And if you're not going to sign up, hit the fucking like button. I mean, come on. But aside from that, hope you guys crush this weekend. But if you're going to crush, do it responsibly. I'll see you in an hour on TSK. Later.